So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us again today. Today's session is on content development, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to our moderator today and our presenter, Craig Patterson from Retail Insider. He's a publisher of a very established organization that certainly it provides a lot of information to the community about retail and trends, et cetera. So you're certainly well surrounded today by incredible content. I just wanted to mention a few things. As you probably know from the past, we will be recording this session and we've kept everybody on mute, but certainly if you want to unmute to ask a question, that's fine. Normally we ask the questions through the chat. I also want to mention, I think I may have said this in the last session, think big. When you're listening to Craig, who's got incredible content to share and knowledge to share, think big. Even though you may be a small retailer, what you can do is you can certainly execute on maybe on a shoestring budget, some of the ideas that he's presenting as well. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Craig and appreciate your time, Craig, for being here today.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Linda. Can everyone hear me here? The volume's working well? Excellent, excellent. Now, should we, I guess we're at 10:31 in our time zone here. Should we get started? Is this best thing to do? Let's do it. Okay, so I've got some slides here. We're going to talk a little bit about communication and the marketing message. So let me just get those up here. Give me a few seconds. I'm going to get my PowerPoint ready and then share the screen. Oh, actually, let me go back. There we go. Share screen, PowerPoint, share. All right, excellent. Welcome. This is slide number 1. So we're going to do the how-tos of content development for retail. And now, just as a little bit of an introduction, I'm Craig Patterson. I've got a business degree and a law degree, and I'm the publisher of Retail Insider Media. We talk all kinds of things about retail, and certainly content development is something that's very, very important for retailers. No question there at all. Let's get right into it. Now, really, the importance of content in terms of messaging for your brand, your business, whatever you want to call it, it's really speaking to the brand's overall positioning, what message you want to get out there, and it fuels marketing initiatives. And that's something that we're going to be talking a little bit about here, getting the word out about your business. Created 10, I guess you'd say, easy steps for communicating here. First of all, define what it is you want to say. Then I guess why you want to say it. Establish goals. When you're communicating, what do you want to have, ultimately, what are you doing? Develop a strategy and tactics for this messaging. Look for the best way to distribute your message, get the word out, identify your target audience or who you want to be speaking to, create that message, establish your budget. We'll talk about that one. That's an important one, especially for small businesses. Map out timelines as well, which is going to certainly be tied into the budget. Develop your plan of action and then implement and track your results. And of course, also look at what learnings you've got as well from all of your activities, and you can tweak things. So we'll get into all of those in more detail and more starting right now. Now, step 1, let's talk a little about defining what you're trying to achieve. Now, really, you're a business, you're trying to communicate. Question is, first of all, as you're developing this plan, what are you looking to communicate about? Are you looking to become better known in your community? Are you educating the public, potential and current consumers about what you've got to sell or to serve? Are you recruiting, say, for a new position? Are you announcing promotions or events? Or are you just celebrating some milestones or even announcing a sale at your store, which is certainly something that a lot of retailers are doing here as we head up to Black Friday. Not to make this not a timeless lecture, but nevertheless, that is something that is coming up here. Now, step 2 within the communication funnel, whatever you want to call it here, is establishing goals. Now, what's the purpose of this communication? Who's the audience that you're looking to speak to, and what's the message? What communication channels are you going to be using? As I mentioned before, this could be including social media. And how are you going to distribute this message, which again could include that social media as well. So these are all things that you look at in terms of trying to set what it is that you want to be getting out of your messaging here. And with that, after setting these goals, is developing a strategy and tactics for the messaging. How are you going to connect with media and other channels to get the message out? This is something that takes a little bit of planning. Certainly background research, I think, is important as well. Creating a unified strategy is important. And what I mean by that is having something that's reasonably consistent, because having messaging that's going to be quite different across different platforms that you're going to be doing this messaging is going to be not necessarily beneficial and maybe confusing to those who are getting the messaging. So certainly having something which is reasonably consistent, I think, is extremely important. As I said here before, using consistent language as well, on top of that other consistency, is easier when you can speak to them in a way that you know that they will understand, which is something I'm trying to do here this morning as well. And basically, how are you going to get the audience that you're targeting to be interested in what you're trying to say, in whatever it is that you're going to be communicating to them, whether or not it's that sale, whether or not it's looking for new staff for your store or otherwise. Step 4, best distribution channels based on strategy. So this is quite interesting because there's all kinds of different ways that you can get the message out. Newsletter. Now, newsletter could be, for example, I've got one. It's through MailChimp. You send out the message by email, and people will be getting that message. They have to opt in, ideally, definitely, I would say. So make sure that if you've got anyone on an email list, that they've actually agreed to be on that list, hopefully. Social media posts as well. There's all kinds of social media options out there. TikTok lately has been really, really popular. I'm on it, but I just do it to watch things more than anything. But I think there's over 1 billion users on TikTok, which is absolutely incredible if you think about it globally. You can actually sell on TikTok. So that opens the world, I guess you'd say, to your products. This is well beyond just your local market. But Instagram, of course, is still popular. Facebook, amongst a bit of an older demographic still, but it's certainly kicking around. Twitter, well, we'll see what happens there. There's a timely comment to this presentation. And LinkedIn, of course. Now, LinkedIn really is a professional network. It really depends what type of business you have. So I think with that strategy is certainly looking at where in social media and where are your consumers going to be. So are they going to be on TikTok or are they going to be on LinkedIn? Really depends what your business is. Now, there's certainly handouts that it can include such things even as flyers. That would be more, I guess you'd say, physical. Are you putting it on a telephone pole in town, or are you putting it out in the mail? Now, SMS or text messaging, this is something that retailers have especially been finding success with. This is really an interesting one because people are quite often more likely to check their text messages than, say, their emails. And getting a consumer, now they've got to agree to it, certainly. Permission is important. You want to make sure that it's okay to be texting people, otherwise they might get angry. But it's been incredibly effective. And there are companies out there that help with that as well. I just know this because I had reported on some of these a while ago when I was a journalist. So, but nevertheless, I've seen retailers. I've got a couple that I order things from, and one of them is a deodorant company, and they almost send too many text messages, but nevertheless, it reminds me that they're there and that they've got something, and that they've got something, say that's a new product or something that's quite seasonal. Other things as well, a website. Does your business have a blog? I think that's actually a really useful tool. Don't have to blog all the time, but for search engine optimization, if you're creating a message, say through a website, that can be an incredibly effective tool to get the messaging out in terms of what your business is, as well as to build search engine optimization so that people can find your business. Search engine optimization is a whole nother conversation. On top of this, I won't get into it too much because I'm not necessarily an expert. There are definitely people out there that know more about it than I do, but I do know enough that I've had a successful business that has it, so I can certainly talk to that. And article, as we have a point here, really, I think does go to website, but can go beyond that as well. I mean, it could be a guest authored article somewhere else. In a different publication, whether or not that's the local newspaper or Lord knows what. It really depends as part of the strategy. So got notes here as well in terms of being important. You think integrated and not siloed. You want to have this messaging again unified and not be too different across whatever channels that you're using, whether or not that's social media or texts or otherwise. They're probably not going to be identical at the same time, but hopefully should be similar. Now, step number 5, identify your target audiences. And we've got here, who are you trying to reach? This can be all kinds. I mean, are you trying to reach consumers again, job seekers? We went through this already, but certainly having a target of knowing who that you want to be speaking to is going to be important, because that comes to part of the strategy as well. And with the audience as well, now we talked about such things as text messaging and whatnot. Consider your audience. Are you marketing to them directly, or are you being a little bit subtle? Are you looking at, say, having advertorial content in a publication, which would talk about your company, but not necessarily be saying or reaching out directly to the reader and saying, buy from us, we're the best, or we've got this product, but indirectly, you are getting publicity. So it really depends how you want to do the messaging and who are you speaking to. What's the best way to get that word out? It really depends. And sometimes there isn't one right answer, but sometimes there's a better answer, and that's the one that you want. Now, step number 6, creating the actual message. This is certainly one of the fun parts of communicating. It's where you get active, especially. Again, what's the purpose of the content? It could be you've got some new merchandise, you're promoting something, you've got a Black Friday sale coming up. You want to increase website visits. Again, that can come through search engine optimization or otherwise. Excuse me. Increase overall awareness of the company. Perhaps new activities, or even just something as simple as an in-store event. You're hosting a pop-up store, or you've got a new product line that's come out. Now you look at the content, you look at the mood, the language, and how you've designed the message. Again, these are all things that are quite important. In terms of mood, are you being friendly and casual? Is your business being a little bit more formal? It really depends on the consumer. Many consumers, unless you're in the luxury space, probably would be a little more, would resonate a little bit more with a casual message, but not too casual at the same time. Keeping a level of professionalism is important. But again, you have to know your audience and what are they like? Are they, Joe down the street that may like to drink a beer, or is it a wealthy person in their mansion or their penthouse apartment? These are all things to consider. I think the messaging could be a little bit different for different people depending on their demographics. But again, looking at the audience in mind, in order to make your messaging the most effective, people will react to a different mood. Now, is your messaging going to be positive or negative in terms of, are you going to create a message which is overwhelmingly, say, optimistic versus even a bit of a scare tactic, or saying that, times are tough or something, or there's a danger that you have to address? Well, the mood of that message is going to be a bit more negative, maybe a little more scary, but it could be more effective in terms of people listening to it. So again, developing that strategy and creating that message is going to be important. And as I mentioned here, again, formal, informal, simple, or complex. Are you speaking to a group of doctors, or are you speaking to someone who may have, say, limited reading skills and comprehension? These are all important things to consider as well. So you really do have to know your audience, depending where you are in the community and what it is that you're marketing. Now, this is an important one, establishing a budget. Now, this is something that I think a lot of people have to consider. This is, we've got it as step 7, but certainly is going to be one that people are going to be considering throughout, especially small businesses, as I'm talking to here today in this presentation. In terms of establishing a budget, what do you have money to do? And do you have the people to make it possible? These are important things because people can cost money as well. But also there's time. So time is money, they say, right? Now, the thing is, I've got here as a note, determine your financial and human resources. Can you afford to spend them on communications? If you've got, say, a small, excuse me, A small store, are you going to dedicate someone, say, that would normally be on the sales floor? This is just an example, to communications efforts, say writing a blog and taking them off the sales floor. Well, that may not be feasible for a business, or even the best use of time and resources. Um, Really, you have to look and say, how much time is this going to take, and do I have the money to do it? So whether or not and there's all kinds of costs that could come from um, communication messaging. If you're doing something online, there's often costs around, say, Google AdWords, um, how to create that marketing message. That can get quite expensive. There's some retailers that have actually said that promoting their online business through Google AdWords and other initiatives, it's in some cases maybe cheaper to actually just rent a store, get traffic, and get people coming by. Certainly having an online store means that you've got potentially a global presence in terms of being able to sell well beyond your local community, but nevertheless, um, it can be expensive to sell online. So again, looking at the finances there, if you're selling or communicating through social media, are you boosting this? It can cost hundreds of dollars or more for certain boosts on such platforms as LinkedIn or on Instagram. I haven't tried it on TikTok, so I don't know how that works, to be honest, but certainly on Instagram and Facebook and probably Twitter. Again, I'm not quite sure what's happening there, but with these platforms, you can certainly do a boost as well for some extra money, just to get a little bit ahead in terms of messaging in front of other people that are trying to message as well. Because when you look at social media, it almost seems like there's endless content, and probably in theory there is. So, but going back to this again and tying this all back into budgets, looking at, again, how much money can you afford? How long is this going to take? And when I go into that a little bit more in the next slide, but what resources do I have? Because resources are going to involve money in the end as well. So definitely these are important things. I have to take a moment here just to cough. My apologies. Getting over a bit of a cold, as many people are. All right, now we've got step number 8, mapping out timelines, as I mentioned before. Now you have to be realistic in terms of how long it's going to take to prepare and implement the message. So that's going to include creating that background plan firstly, and then actually going out and doing it. So and mapping out these timelines is certainly going to, again, tie into budgets and whatnot in terms of the messaging. So initial strategic planning is very important. Definitely put time aside for that. It really depends on the person, how much you want to dedicate. I mean, I don't know if there's one right answer, but I've heard some bigger executives say that they would rather execute or implement a plan and certainly have a planning phase, but take more time for the actual execution. Whereas some will say that they want to really take time to plan things out well, and then when that's ready, execute properly. And that may be a relatively quick execution. So it really, really depends on the strategy and the messaging and what's going to work. And I guess even sometimes personalities, because you don't want to, at least in my opinion, strategize something and do it quickly and then not really put a lot of thought into it, and then go out and put effort into it and realize, oh no, this was the wrong thing. I didn't do this right. I should have planned this out better. So really it's again, there's no right answer, but certainly time and effort, and I think comfort is going to be important. Maybe speak to one or more friends, get a little bit of help perhaps if that's feasible, depending on your situation here. But in terms of timelines, prepare materials and create a plan, set it out, just write it out or type it out, whatever is the most comfortable. That's going to allow for a situation where you're gonna be able to see a big picture, and you may be able to dedicate certain time periods to it, or at least start working through the strategy and realizing that it's going to take certain efforts and perhaps certain times, and say, well, we're going to run, say, a social media campaign for this amount of time, or we're going to require this much time to write a blog post. Well, it's going to really depend on the activities. In terms of spreading the message, this is something that's going to be coming, and certainly I think allocating time to monitor and evaluate these activities is important. So certainly looking at what's happening and see if there's a way to maybe tweak things as you're moving along. there's ways to always improve. Things aren't static, and if you're doing certain activities in terms of trying to get the message out, you can certainly look at what's happening and maybe able to, in even real time, make some changes. So if a social media post isn't working well, or even worse, if there's something in there that might be a little bit offensive, or people have been asking questions, well, ideally there should be an opportunity to hopefully change that. And maybe the whole question around something that's offensive is an important thing too. I hadn't necessarily put that into these notes here, but opportunities to hopefully be transparent and honest, I think, are important for communicating where possible, and certainly looking at different activities and trying to, say, fix something that isn't quite working out right for whatever reason that might be. Next step we've got here is we're going to develop an action plan. Putting it all together, it seems like a really long process, but it's not as bad as it seems. You want to put this together into a plan that you can act on. Everything should be hopefully put together here. You're designing your message or messages if you're using different channels. Again, whether or not that's social media or email. Making contact with the people who can help you, and getting everything in place to start the communication efforts. Evaluate some construction noise, sorry. Evaluate efforts so that you can continue to improve. And I mentioned that before in terms of the action plan and evaluations. So definitely look at where things are going and where you can improve. Now, that can also include activities where you're looking to improve for future campaigns. You may not be just doing one campaign, or this may just be a test. Say if a small business is starting out in terms of new marketing efforts, or looking at some sort of new campaigns, but always look to improve things. And one thing that I think is important to consider is that, you know, I wouldn't call something that doesn't work a failure. It's a learning experience. I think that's a really important thing to consider as well when working in the communications field. There may be some situations where that communication would be looked at as not necessarily being successful, but that just means that it requires improvement, and hopefully there wasn't anything that was too egregious that would have occurred as part of that. And step number 10 that we've got here as well is implement and track your results. If you implement these results, you know, you're looking to evaluate the communication plan in terms of how well it was carried out, as well as how it worked. So how were the efforts? Was it done optimally? Was it done efficiently? Were there things that could have been improved in terms of the time and money and effort that was put in? And also look at how effective was this messaging? Did we get more customers into our store? Did we see an uptake in web traffic? Did we make more sales online? These are all ways of being able to track whether or not that campaign worked. Or did I get that employee? It could be all kinds of things, again, in terms of communications. And each time you implement it and change, it can become more effective, which I think is a great thing as well. Adjust the plan if needed. I've got notes here. Continuing to communicate with the community. And again, what are the learnings? What can be done better? And continue to try to improve. And on top of this as well, I think it's important to note that sometimes you don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel. You might want to look for some best case examples of what is out there in terms of what others are doing to communicate, whether or not that's in a similar space to where you are. If you're a retailer, for example, that has a small store, or you're selling online, what are people in that space doing in terms of their marketing? And not necessarily copy it, but maybe actually improve on it, do something better, do something different, do a competitive analysis and say, well, I don't want to be doing what my competitor is doing, but I'm curious what they are doing. These are all great things to consider as well. So communication is an art and a science altogether, and it's really quite a fascinating topic. And that's why we're here now to see if anyone has any questions, because this is quite an extensive topic. And Linda as well is certainly an expert here. So if anyone in the audience here has some questions, we can certainly dive into that as well. And Linda, should I stop sharing my screen here, or what works best?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Craig. If anybody has any questions, please put it in the chat. Oh, we have a question.
Should I stop the share here so I can see the question?
No, you can't. No, keep it the way it is. Yes. So you can unmute if you'd like, or you could put your, I'm not sure what the person's name is, but Fred, if you'd like to ask your question, or if you want to unmute and you can
Yes.
ask it verbally.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm also getting over the flu, so pardon my voice. But I'm Teresa. I own a small consignment shop in downtown Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And February will be 4 years, and I have been primarily only social media. The only thing that I ever seem to have time for is Facebook. I'm extremely frustrated at Facebook at the moment, and looking for what would be best for someone who cannot afford a full-time social or even a part-time social media person. I do everything pretty much. I only have one part-time helper. So for someone like me who has extremely limited budget, time, and also resources as far as staff, what social media platform would you suggest for a consignment store? You know, we are sort of a hot commodity right now with the economy being poor. We're actually doing okay. You know, we're doing better than I expected, to be honest. And I think it is because we have less expensive offerings, and it's helping people right now with their budgets. So where would you recommend a budget conscious consumer? Because my demographic, obviously, people do not mind coming to a resale. You know, they're the ones that I want to draw. They're the people who are looking for discounted clothing, shoes, accessories for their family. Where do you think I can tap into those people and find them? You know, there's so many people in this little small town that still don't know we're there. So what do you suggest on that?
Is it is the clientele a bit older or younger typically?
You know, we are about a mile from our local university. So my demographic is unusual because most stores do have a set demographic. I don't. I carry everything from polyester clothing for my little older ladies, you know, that love the shoulder pads still. And then I've got my high school and college girls and guys that come into the store every single day. So I have an interesting demographic because we're in a college town and we're a very small town. The closest mall to us is an hour in Tulsa. So I've got a great opportunity here. I just don't know how to tap into it. I mean, I'm a member of my Main Street Association, active member of my chamber. You know, I'm in the community. It's so frustrating though, because Facebook hides your ads. I mean, I'm lucky if 3 people see it. If I promote it, I get a little bit more activity, but I really just don't have that $20 sometimes to drop on this ad and feel like very few people. It's not a good bang for your buck, in my opinion. So Facebook is extremely frustrating because of that. They've changed their algorithm or something so that I can no longer, let's say I put an ad on Facebook, I'm having a sale this week, everything's 20% off. They have made it now where I cannot share that to my personal page anymore.
Oh,
I literally can't click my own ad that I just created, my own post in my own business page. It will not allow me anymore to even share it to my personal page. When that began to happen, I'm losing, you know, I have 3,000 friends on my personal Facebook page, most of them local. Extremely frustrating that I cannot share my own ad. So where is the most economic social media platform that would reach, you know, all of those demographics? I know your older population are not probably going to be on TikTok. I've thought about TikTok, but then my younger customers don't really have the funds. You know, they're not really big spenders. You know, they come in regularly though. They are my regular customers. Those young kids, they love to pop in, see what's new. They're all into vintage. So it's a conundrum.
yeah, it depends. And Linda, I want to get your opinion on here, but I'm wondering because you don't have an Instagram page yet for this business.
I do have one. I'm just not very familiar with how to use that. I do have it linked with my Facebook. I just haven't spent a lot of time on there, and I don't really know how to utilize that very well either. So I'm a little bit social media. I mean, I'm not even on TikTok, and I'm 55. So my demographic, you know, we're just now like, okay, that's scary business right there, you know, going into TikTok. But everybody keeps telling me that's where I should be. so I don't know, I'm at a little bit of a crossroads because my demographic is so vast. Most people have a very precise demographic and I don't. And I think it's because it's resale, the nature of my business, probably also the nature of our local community, that I have a little bit of both, which is nice,
Well,
but
so-
it's also confusing.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is a couple of things. Firstly, we do have a session on social media. That's our next session next week, and on
Okay.
social media commerce that follows. I would say that you are in a conundrum because you've got, you cover basically all demographics. And if your customer, the younger demographic, isn't spending money, and most of the people that are spending the lion's share of their, in your store are that older customer, then I would say that Instagram and Facebook are probably the best route. But what we could do in our next session, I'll make sure that we cover it, is, the details in terms of how do you actually utilize those platforms, and how do you utilize them in the most effective ways, so that you can, stretch those dollars because you have minimal budgets.
Right.
And, certainly social media is not the only way also, right?
Right.
We've talked about a number of things over some of the sessions in the past in terms of, how do you get to your customers, et cetera. We talked about, the segmentation of your customers. Then we talked about, how do you reach them? How do you get to them? Certainly,
Right.
I don't know if you have a database. And what we could do, Teresa, is we do have one-on-ones that we offer every week on each subject matter. So this week is about content development, and certainly we could talk about that one-on-one in terms of how do you articulate, how do you do things, how do you write content?
That would be great.
Yeah. So I think
I actually
after this-
enjoy writing. It's just, and I'm not so bad at it. I've owned a sign company for 22 years. And so I am sort of I have kind of a marketing mind, I guess, because of that. And I still have that business I run on the side, believe it or not, with the store.
Wow.
And I'm losing my mind, like literally. And it's because of when COVID happened, we were shut down for a long time, like a lot of people, and we're just really kind of starting to recover. I mean, I know it sounds crazy because it's been 3 years, but it's been 3 extremely challenging, interesting years about not just social media, about how to reach our customers, but what do they want right now? What do they need right now? So many people are shopping online because there are still, I got COVID 3 weeks ago. It's the 3rd time I've had it personally. I mean, I had to close my store for a week because I was sick and I didn't have enough staff to cover. That is the reality of what's happening in small town America, and with small businesses. We don't have anyone to fall back on because we can't afford them anymore. And so the challenges are so multifaceted. You have to, as a small store owner like myself, without staff to help, I have to pick and choose every single day. It feels like pick and choose what is going to keep my doors open today. And sometimes that's just me sitting there and just by myself pricing more items to get more items on the floor. That leaves me no energy or time. So hiring a social media helper, hiring a content developer, have you found that, in my industry at least, to be beneficial? Is that a good, would that be a good use of my very small limited marketing budget? Creating content development, I love the blog idea, but I'm old school. So maybe blogs might be, because I do have a website. I finally have a web store. We just are building it at the moment. So I have invested this year in a web store. That is our next move. So as far as reaching that demographic, maybe a blog. When he said that, like, I'd kind of forgotten about blogs. I think that's a kind of maybe a missing element for us. Reaching that older demographic, possibly.
I think,
So,
what Craig was talking about earlier in terms of putting a plan and having a strategy, of course you have to kind of reverse engineer, think about what you're going to do, but first you want to think about what are the main objectives, right? You're trying to get people
yes,
to your store, you're trying to get the word out, you're trying to create visibility, you're trying to create awareness. So what are the best ways to do that on a shoestring budget? And,
right.
how do you do that with limited people? And we can talk about that when we talk about
Okay.
social media, just so that, in our, we'll be talking about how do you create a content calendar? How do you create that, the content so that, and there are platforms that are not crazy expensive, but they are
Right.
have some,
that'll help you create that content.
well, not
I've
only
seen,
help you create it, but also, plan it. But again,
gotcha.
it does come
Okay,
with a cost.
right.
But, you could maybe choose rather than hiring somebody, well, you purchase that platform to help you plan it. So you're not
Yes.
manually putting in the content, right? So we could
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about that
Mhm.
in next week's session. And certainly if you
Okay.
want to do a one-on-one in terms of content development, you'll be receiving an email and a little worksheet, one-page worksheet to help you think through a little bit, and then we could schedule that one-on-one, not a problem whatsoever. But your
Okay,
questions are
great.
very, I'm sure that you have similar questions to a lot of the people that are on this call
Mhm.
and part of this program.
Right. One thing you asked about, it was a list, as far as like a customer list. Okay, Square. I have Square. Square has been wonderful to me. They actually have offered all throughout COVID very small loans, and it has literally made so much difference for me. I can't even express. It doesn't affect your credit score, but they also keep the emails and phone numbers of every single customer that swipes a card in my store, which is probably 75% of my customers use a card. So it's not very expensive. But I noted what he said earlier. He said, you don't want to make them angry because they didn't opt in.
Right, when they're
So-
actually giving you their data or signing up or
But they're not. See, Square has all that, and they're for a fee. I can acquire those. That's been my hesitation. The reason I haven't implemented that yet, because it sounds wonderful, because it sounds like the cheapest, easiest way that I could reach the people who've already been in there, give them a 10% discount on your next purchase or something like that, to incentive to come back in. But I hesitate because I don't have their permission, and I don't like getting unsolicited texts or emails. So I don't think a lot of people use email anymore, especially the younger generation. So that's a dilemma. I don't want to offend anyone, and I certainly don't want, to bother anyone. So it sounds like a wonderful program, but opting in, that's a thing. So we have started collecting customer information, asking them, would you like to get text? So I'm slowly compiling that list of people who do want to know what we're doing. They do want to know about sales. So would you suggest biting the bullet and doing the Square thing, even though they haven't really said, yes, I want those, and just take my chances? Or should I continue to just slowly populate my own list one-on-one with my customers, which will take a lot of time? It'll take a lot more time to do it that way. I'm just not sure. I'm a socially aware person, and I do like to treat others the way I like to be treated. And I don't know that I would love to get texts. Maybe one, I wouldn't mind. Maybe I could send a text that just says, would you be interested in getting more of these? And we apologize if you didn't like those. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm one thing for sure is that it sounds like your customers, because your customers are an older demographic, they may actually be more receptive to an email at the beginning. And I mean, you're a small business. Of course, it's not like if these are not opted in emails, and Craig, chime in if you disagree with me. But in my mind, you're a small business. You could basically email them and say, we're thrilled to have the ability to connect with you. Put a note in the sense that, of saying that you'd like to see if they want to be part of your database, and would they be interested in being, told of sales, et cetera, and how would they like to know, through social media, or rather through text message, or through email, or none of the above?
That's a great idea.
I mean, of course, it's not compliant. So, I'm going on record
Right.
to say that, but you're a small business. It's not like you're, Target or something, right? So I think that you would be forgiven by those, because they have purchased, and I don't know if Square is taking the data. Like, it seems to me when I've bought things with Square, they had my email address, but I thought I had to actually agree.
It's interesting now that you say that. Customers have actually gotten angry with me about that, and they'll finish their transaction and says, would you like an email or a text, receipt sent to you? They say yes, their email address pops up right in front of them, or their phone number, and they look at me, and this has happened numerous times. How do you know my phone number? How do you know my email address?
Really?
And I look at them and I'm like, well, you sold your soul when you got that card. So and they laugh, and it breaks the ice. I'm like, you realize you sold your soul and your firstborn. I mean, that's just the way it is. And it breaks the ice and makes them not, because I can see that they're very uncomfortable with that. Why do you have that information? That's my information, you know? And I'm with you on that. It's been sort of a little surprising to me that they're able to offer that information. That bothers me just a little bit too. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just privacy. It's just about privacy.
Right.
And we all deserve our privacy, no matter where we shop, no matter, you know, we deserve our privacy. And so I like the email ID. I think I could send email first to the ones that I'm familiar with. Maybe I should just, you know, and I know a lot of my regulars, maybe start with my regulars, you know, and say, look, you know, you're in there all the time. We really love to see your face. I want to thank you for coming so often, blah, blah, blah. I do have a punch card that I started. I don't know if this will help someone else. Maybe someone will listen to the recording later. Because I have a sign company, I designed a punch card, and it's 10 $20 punches. I went on Amazon and bought a really unique heart-shaped punch that maybe nobody can duplicate, hopefully. And I initial it first so we can see the pen writing behind it before we punch it. And once that card is full and they have 10 $20 punches, they get a $20 gift card.
That's great.
To spend in this. Oh my gosh, I've been doing it now since April. It has taken off. People are literally coming in with their punch card in their hand. They're like, I'm going to find $20 worth of stuff today because I want to get my free, you know, it's really cute. I like it. It's old fashioned marketing. It's working for my particular demographic and for my store. And I'm telling you, the younger crowd likes it more than the older ones.
Well, everybody likes to have an incentive, right?
Right. And it was so inexpensive. I mean, you know, I bought 1,000 cards, you know, for $80, and it's just working beautifully so far. So maybe that will help someone else. It's just a way to engage with them, to make them feel valuable. I can see it on their face that they love it. They feel valuable. They feel appreciated, you know, and I always, when I hand it to them, I'm like, this is to thank you for coming in the door. We're missing our customers, you know, we appreciate you coming by, you know, we want to reward you for doing that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Teresa, this has been great. Thank you for
I know we have to go.
No, it's totally fine. But what I was going to say is we'll make sure to remind you about having one-on-ones, because I think, you know, and your sharing of information is certainly very appreciative, because as you say, people will listen to this and they'll actually, you know, take away certain learnings for themselves as well. The next session is on social media content development. So that'll be very helpful. And we'll make sure that we address some of the questions that you've had in the content that we develop, so that, you know, some of those answers will be in there. And certainly,
awesome.
If you have obviously make sure you have your other questions ready. Because we'll be very happy to hear other questions in that session as well. But again,
awesome. Thank you so much for offering this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I will. Absolutely.
All right. You have a fantastic day. Thank you so very much, Craig, for your time today, and looking forward to seeing everybody next week for social media. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.